So we're speaking with Chief Christopher Mannino of the Park Forest Police Department. Chief, thank you so much for taking the time. We are talking today on September 11th, happens to be. So one of the things that I was curious about, we're dealing with a pandemic, and you're dealing, the officers are and the village dealing with that in a much different way, different perspective. Through the years with the tabletop drills and the rehearsals for disaster or whatever, a train derailing, all kind of different scenarios. Did you ever plan for something like this?
So when it comes to the tabletop exercises, those tend to focus on a multi-agency response to a more physical type of a crisis, such as you mentioned, a train derailment. We've done active shooter threats, different kinds of threats in a public setting. It tends to focus on those more active type situations. That said, there was prior preparedness for pandemics, specifically along the lines of potential vaccine distributions. That's something that has always been ongoing. But when it comes to the actual game plan, the operational game plan for pandemics, there really wasn't a game plan or a book to go by. We kind of had to create policy as it went. And, you know, especially because in this pandemic, the information seemed to change, especially in the beginning, so quickly, we had to consistently update our policies and procedures to reflect the new best practices. So it was really a lot of calling audibles all on the way, trying to make sure we were doing the best we could to protect our personnel while we still protected the people that we serve.
One of the things we've come to say here at the high school is we're building the plane as we fly it, so to speak. And a lot of that has, every day, as you say, is a new experience with this. In light of the events of the summer, the pause in professional sports for a few days, wanting change, and what has Park Forest? You have approached things differently, I think, through the years, and have made an effort to reach out to many different community members. How is that different now with respect to race and anti-racism?
You know, to be honest with you, Gary, I wouldn't say that it's any different. I would say that we've all along had a focus on cultural competency. So while the events of the summer, you know, the death of George Floyd was tragic and it was wrong, it didn't change what we're doing, because we were already focused on ensuring we have good relationships in the community and that the type of policing we do is fair and impartial. So I would say what we're doing is a continuation of what we've been doing for at least the last several years here.
Thank you. How have things changed with respect to police responding to mental health crises? You and I spoke a few years ago whenever you first came on board as chief, and we touched a little bit on the mental health that officers are called. The resources in the area have vanished almost. What's happening with training with officers and your response to mental health crises?
Well, the International Association of Chiefs of Police has a campaign called the One Mind campaign. And that campaign has 4 basic steps that they want to see all of American law enforcement take to become more proficient at responding to those who may be in a mental health crisis. And one of those is ensuring that at least 20% of your department is trained in crisis intervention team training. We were the first Illinois agency to complete the One Mind campaign, and we've exceeded that 20% to have it be 100% of our personnel who have over 2 years of service are crisis intervention trained. And the only reason those with less than 2 years of service aren't CIT trained is because Illinois law doesn't allow it. So we're at the maximum level of crisis intervention team training. Additionally, those who have less than 2 years generally go to a one-day mental health awareness course. And then we also have periodic training, either in-house or outside resourced, that is on various topics such as interacting with someone with autism or other mental health awareness topics.
Chief, is there anything else that you would like to say? Your outreach, or the outreach of the department through social media, is I think unparalleled. Is there anything else that you would want to say to members of the community during this time of pandemic crisis?
Well, I guess there's a couple things I want to say. First of all, going back to your question regarding cultural competency and just how we're handling things. One of the things I want to stress is that, Illinois law says that every law enforcement officer has to have cultural competency training every 3 years. And while that is a okay start, that is nowhere near sufficient to ensure that everyone in law enforcement has a good grasp of the complexity of society and of policing in a complex society. We make sure that we have that training every single year. And even then, I would say a class alone is not enough to make somebody culturally competent. It's culture that does that. And so our focus at the Park Forest Police Department is not just making sure we tick a box with mandated training. It's to make sure we have a culture of inclusiveness and a respect for life and a belief in fair and impartial policing. It's not just a catchphrase. It's something we fundamentally believe in. So I think that if we want to see a better policing in America, that it has to go beyond mandated training. It has to be a cultural change, a way of looking at policing that will bring about that change. And it's not a short-term goal, but it's certainly achievable. And it's done by, I believe, the leadership and leadership believing in the principles of fair and impartial policing. And then I guess lastly, this has been a year unlike anything I've ever seen in my time. And it's been difficult on many levels. It's been difficult to be in law enforcement. I also know it's very difficult for many members of our community. And I guess what I want to say is that what I love about policing in Park Forest is that we have a partnership with the community. I've never felt like we are policing the community. I've always felt like we're policing with the community. And you see that by how many people are willing to call us when they see something suspicious or are willing to assist us when we are working on an issue. It's a true partnership. And while I always think it could be strengthened, that partnership, I think, is what makes us a bit unique. When all this unrest was going on, we had 3 peaceful protests that touched Park Forest. We assisted with all of them, and there was no conflict. It was exactly how it's supposed to be. It was a perfect example of the use of First Amendment rights, and a great example of law enforcement assisting our residents and those who participated in being a part of that. And I think that is an ideal. I'm not saying we're perfect or it's perfect, but I think we have an ideal situation here in Park Forest. And I guess my message would be that we've gotten through it together so far. We'll get through it together moving forward, always working to have a stronger partnership. But I'm very, very thankful for the relationship that we have with our community here. And I would just reiterate, we're here to serve. We firmly believe that we are fortunate to be able to serve, to be able to do what we do, and we do it for the men and women and children who live and visit Park Forest, and we're very happy to be able to do that.
Chief, thank you so much for your time. As always, appreciate you giving time for our viewers, and especially for the day-to-day. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.